Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss what I think is the best response to Tory culture wars I've heard from an ordinary member of the public for some time. Against a phone-in host who was trying to desperately play the Tory game of red meat himself, this caller highlighted the frustration that are not only serious politicians, but many members of the public have with childish Tory distractions away from what are for them the real issues. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the hero of the day on Monday, I think it was Monday, was representing Hartlepool. He actually sounded like he was from the Northwest, in all honesty, but sounds like he lives in Hartlepool now at any rate. Now, Hartlepool has a bit of a reputation for being a bit thick, a reputation that they keep renewing with distressing regularity. It's not the fault of most people in Hartlepool, of course, but first of all, some considerable time ago, what they're most famous for, a French vessel was sunk off the coast and the only survivor was a monkey. And as we were at war with France at the time, the locals put the monkey on trial as a French spy. They then convicted said monkey and put it to death. Now, you could argue this was a very long time ago and the current locals can't possibly be held responsible for that. But then, more recently, there was a by-election in Hartlepool a few years ago, a couple of years ago, actually, 2 years ago, 2021, I believe. It was when the Tories were still enjoying their sort of vaccine bounce and Labour lost to the Conservatives. And as journalists were gauging public opinion, there were a couple of beauties ahead of the election itself. There was one guy who said that he was going to vote Conservative because Labour hadn't built a hospital in the area for 10 years. It's the Tories that had been in power for that 10 years, not Labour. Another fella said that he was going to vote Conservative because of all the food banks. He says, there weren't any food banks round here when Labour were in power. They just can't seem to get away from their monkey hanging past, can't they? But then there was some hope. There was some hope. A ray of light from the fetid swamp. A champion for Hartlepool, although, as I say, by the sounds of it, not from Hartlepool, appears on an LBC phone-in. Not with James O'Brien, but Nick Ferrari in this case. I'm not going to call him a Tory apologist, but he does enjoy joining in with the culture wars at least. And this caller was expressing exasperation at Starmer constantly being asked about, well, what's the woman then, Keir? What's the woman then? The trans issues, basically. When Starmer himself has recently said, what is the point of asking me all these bloody questions that I've answered no end of times for a start, and most voters don't really think it's what's going to determine their vote? The right wing were this weekend trying to claim that he'd shifted his stance on trans issues. Now, after I'd caught up with the interviews, it wasn't true at all. He was just reiterating it. He just said what he's been saying for the past 2 years whenever any bonehead with a microphone pretending to be a journalist asked him. But this caller's not a politician, as far as I know anyway, but a member of the public. And they were also tired of seeing the leader of the opposition being asked about trans issues when there were bigger problems for like most people. He said he didn't care if someone identified as a grated carrot. He said someone can identify however they like as long as they don't hurt anyone. And that's the crux of the whole thing, isn't it? Why do people care what other people want to do if it's not hurting you? There was something else this weekend. Bit of a tangent, but similar sort of thinking. A Tory MP weighed in on, Scott Benton. It was a plan to put calorific content of drinks in pubs. Now, we've already got this in a lot of restaurants anyway. You go to KFC, you can see how many calories are in a thing. We even have it in a lot of pubs on their food menus. So why not the drinks themselves if people want them? And for those who aren't interested, what harm does it do to you? This moronic MP moaning about it as if it would impede him or others in some way. What harm does it do to have this information? If you don't want it, ignore it. It's supposed to be the job of politicians to make our lives better. That sometimes means getting rid of some things that harm us, and it sometimes means providing more of the things that help us. Promoting things that don't do anybody any good, like tax breaks for the ultra wealthy, or attacking things which don't do anyone any harm, like calorific values on a drinks menu, they They don't do anything other than waste time. But anyway, back to this caller, because he was absolutely superb. Absolutely superb. Another line which absolutely got to the heart of the issue here.
So when you start asking him about what is a woman, he knows what a woman is. Everybody does. All you want to do is get red meat to the frothing, not even masses, to the frothing kind of people who want to get angry and say you can't recognise what a woman is. So there's a difference between a scientific woman and whether you want to identify as a woman, a grated carrot or anything else, Nick. There absolutely is. But we got bigger problems than that. So all Keir Starmer does is trying to basically appeal to as many people as he can. And who cares what somebody identifies as? If you care what somebody identifies as, as long as people don't hurt anybody, you can identify as what you like. And to ask the leader of the opposition to recognise what a woman is, when actually you don't really care what the answer is, you just want to know whether he can upset as many people as you want him to, then it's just abhorrent. There's a government that's been in power for 13 years. 13 years. The country's never been so divided as it is now. Never. And you know what? They point at somebody else and go, look at them. They don't know whether they've got a willy or not. And then get everybody angry about that.
And that's it as well, isn't it? The journalists trying to feed the red meat to the gammons, they don't care what Starmer's answer is. They're not interested. That they're not asking the question because they're interested in the answer. They're asking the question in an effort to upset people because they think it upsets people. That's their aim, to upset people. You know, like he says, the country is so divided, and all the Tories are doing, along with their client journalists and the likes of Ferrari absolutely joining in, is trying to divide people further. But I would go further. They're asking the question, not just in order to deliberately upset people and divide people. They're asking the question to reduce the amount of time that Starmer and any other Labour MP has to talk about the issues which are being raised on the doorstep, which people are discussing at work or down the pub. You know, what people care about is the cost of living. It's getting access to a GP, their kids getting a decent education and a job at the end of it, them getting a job. They care about having somewhere decent to live, to feel that they're part of society, that, you know, whenever they see on the news that the economy is doing better, okay, they haven't heard it for a while, but whenever they do hear it on the news, they like to feel that they are already aware because they can see it in their pocket. But if they keep seeing the news, oh, everything's going fine, well, why isn't it going fine for me then? That's what people want. They want to be part of the good things that are apparently happening. And if you wonder if more of the people, you know, might not agree with Starmer here, like the journalists who constantly talk about these issues, which are not at the forefront of voters' thinking, are not really representing them. It's not just Starmer saying that trans issues hardly ever come up when he's talking to the public. Polling. Whenever you get polling companies who poll, you know, the most important policy areas, they almost never include trans issues. And that's because every now and then they do, and it turns out it's not even a blip. You know, maybe the problem is that those of us who are really interested in politics on all sides, we spend a lot of time listening to and reading political views from lots of people, again, on all sides, all part of this same sort of bubble of politically engaged people. So we spend a lot of time going back and forth over all the usual buzz terms used in this sort of discourse. Most people don't get involved in that. You know, there'll be a lot of swing voters don't spend much time paying attention to politics at all. In fact, one of Labour's target voters are specifically people who are turned off by politics, but they still vote. They don't know what culture wars are. They're not consumed by debates about anything. They've got no interest in paying attention to issues that have got nothing to do with them or anyone else they know. So the Tories they've got limited cut through on like asylum issues. That's one of their other culture wars. But, you know, they do have some scope to try and convince people that somehow it has an impact on their lives. You know, it's how they won the Brexit referendum after all. But when the Tories try to bang on about trans rights, what are they hoping to gain? Zero way of persuading people that it's trans people who have made them poorer rather than the Tories. You know, the most it does in their favour, as I say, is waste Labour's time talking about something of no impact in the election, reducing the amount of time they get to talk about something relevant. You know, but some of the useless cabbages think that the issue itself can be an electoral platform for them. And again, going back to the guy on the call, I do wonder how many other people see things as he does. Because this is just one person. You know, but what if there's lots of people and they're watching someone who's going to be one of the two choices for Prime Minister at the next election? You know, people vote in a general election for lots of different reasons, but quite a lot of them vote for the government. Most of them, in fact. And so they look at who's going to be the head of that government. And they see journalists asking one of the potentials for Prime Minister about issues that aren't a voting issue for them. And they hear Starmer saying, this isn't a voting issue. Can I talk about the issues that people want? And they think to themselves, yes, Starmer wants to talk about the things that matter to me. Why isn't this journalist letting them? And I wonder how many will have sympathy for a political leader who says he wants to be asked about the policies which matter to everyone, but is not being allowed to. And I wonder if the Tory media are not sometimes biting themselves on the arse when they take these positions, which are so far out of step with the public, just because they somehow think it's a good way to obscure Labour's policies on more popular areas. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I've obviously put a link to the clip in the description below if you want to hear it yourself. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships, and until next time, I'll see you later.